This is an 11th video working in pool table model in Blender, and in this video we're going to develop some images for our pool table balls. From online I've picked up the numbering and color scheme for the balls, and it goes like this. Ball 1 and 9 are yellow, 2 and 10 are blue, 3 and 11 are red, 4, 12 purple, 513 orange, 614 green, 715 brown or maroon, and of course the 8 ball is black and the cue ball is white. Balls 1 through 8 and the cue ball are solid. 9 through 15 are stripes. So obviously I'm going to be doing a 8 ball set here. So we'll just get rid of that and we'll come over into the GIMP. Start off, we'll go File, New Image. We'll create a new image. I'm going to start off with a width of 128 pixels and a height of 128 pixels. That's going to give us a small square. So we'll expand that, and then I'll select all. Come into the Image menu and Canvas Size. I'm going to increase the canvas size to a width of 256. With the option chained or linked selected, the height will just follow by clicking along. Lower in the dialog, we'll show the projected image and the location of the existing image. And by default, it will land up in the upper left corner like this, and that's exactly where we want it, so that's good. For the layers, resize layers option, we'll want to choose all visible layers and resize. What this is going to give us is a larger square with a selection made in the corner, and this selection represents the halfway mark along both the horizontal and vertical. So what we'll do with this is we're going to stroke that selection. So we'll stroke selection. In the stroke selection dialog, we'll reduce the line width to 1, come into the line style, deselect anti-aliasing, and stroke that. Then we'll select all. Come into the Layers menu, Transparency, and Color to Alpha. By default, Color to Alpha will start from the color white, which is what we want. And we're going to turn all the white into alpha channel, leaving only the black lines. Now we're going to need the layers palette. So we'll open up the layers palette and we'll duplicate that layer. So we'll duplicate. Then in the toolbox, we'll use the rotate tool to rotate that one of those layers. And we'll rotate it by 180 degrees. Rotate that. In the layers palette, this will give us a floating selection. We need to anchor that and then merge down the background copy, leaving us with one layer. That one layer is a crosshair or a cross section of our image, marking the exact center of the image. Now we can add a new layer. The new layer will use a fill type of white. And OK, that blots out our crosshair image. We'll just click on the eye icon so that it's no longer visible, and create a new layer. This new layer will give a fill type of transparency, as well as all of the new layers that we're going to add from here. So we'll give it a transparency, then select all. Click on our color palette and go to a yellow color, yellow being the color of the 1 and the 9 ball. So we'll go OK. And we'll fill that layer with yellow color. So we'll fill with foreground color. Now that blots out our crosshair. So we'll click on the eye icon. And remove that from visibility. And add a new layer. Again, a transparent layer. In this layer, we're going to make a rectangular selection. We'll use the rectangular select tool, use the expand from center option, as well as the fixed aspect ratio option. We'll set an aspect ratio of 1 to 2. And then we'll click on the landscape orientation. Now, in my capture window, I've noticed that the GIMP's actual cursor doesn't show up, and I tend to get a standard Windows cursor. The GIMP's cursor is a crosshair, and I'm going to line that crosshair up with the lines with the center lines I've drawn in this background layer here. And I'll scale in until these lines more or less match up with the size of the GIMP crosshair cursor. So I've centered completely on it, and I'll pull that selection out a ways, and then zoom back. I'm going to pull this selection out until it hits the edge. And I won't want to extend off of the edge, and then I'll fill that with the foreground color. This layer I'm going to reduce the opacity of to 50%, so that I can see it, but I can also see my cross section. Then I'll add a new layer. Again, transparent. Go to the Ellipse Select tool. Again, select the Expand from Center option, as well as the Fixed Aspect Ratio option. This I'll leave at a 1:1. That'll give me a perfect circle. I'll also flip my color over so that I'm dealing it with a white. And again, zoom into the image so that I can center my cursor. I'll center it and expand that circle. And I'll expand it to nearly the edge, but not quite. And then fill that selection with the foreground color. Again, I'm going to reduce the opacity of this layer so I can see my cross section. And add a new layer. And again, another transparent layer. On this layer, I'm going to write my text. First off, I'll choose a font and a color. I'll return my color scheme to the black and white, which will leave me with a black color. I'll choose the font Serif Bold and increase the size. I'll try around 60. Leave all the other settings at default, except we could possibly select the centered option, but that usually doesn't make much difference. In the text editor, I'm going to try the number 15, and this isn't the number that I'm going to use, but I want to try a 2-digit number to check on the size of my font to see how well it sits inside of this circle. That sits okay, but I could probably afford raising the size of my font a bit and bring up the size of my text some. So I'm going to go up to a 65, and that fills that circle up nicely. So now I'll just change that to a 1 and center that 1 on the circle. I'll use the crosshairs and the circle to center it though. And I don't want to get too caught up in the crosshairs with the text, because what looks centered in the circle is more important. With my text centered, I can then anchor that layer to the new layer. So I'll merge that layer down, and it will join in the layer beneath it. Adding text will create a new layer. We need to merge it with an existing layer. I'll deselect that and add another new layer. Again, transparent. And again, I'm going to write text in it, but this time I'm going to use the number 9 for my other ball, because both the 1 and the 9 ball are yellow. And I'll center that text, mostly paying attention to the circle, but also using the crosshairs as well. With it centered, I'll again merge that down with that layer. Now, with this combination of layers, I can now return the opacity of the 2 layers I reduced it in to 100%. This combination of layers is going to give me all of the tools and shapes to be able to create an image for each and every numbered ball. And in the next video, we'll come back and we'll start saving these balls. We'll do 1 and 9, and then I'll show how to change the color for another ball. So that'll be in the next video, and until then, happy modeling.